I'll be very clear.
Yeah.
The United Kingdom needs to grow a pair of balls and have some guns.
He physically couldn't handle the technology I was showing him. A lot of these people can't physically handle the Western culture until they're properly assimilated.
So yes, she's a charlatan. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You can tell by looking at her that her IQ hovers around room temperature.
You defend terrorists because you're probably a little terrorist yourself as well. That's the reality.
On the question of Sharia courts, certainly they should not supersede the actual laws of the country. If a Muslim community wants to settle its own disputes using religious law consensually, they should be allowed to do that if they want.
You're trying to lecture me. I'm agreeing. We shouldn't be supporting those people. My question to you is, why do you continue to support a president who is rubbing elbows with MBS, who, you know, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have killed more people than Jeffrey Dahmer? With
the previous point, too, about bringing up Jeffrey Dahmer. Dude, I've killed more people than Jeffrey Dahmer, and I don't think I'm a bad guy.
I think this is just utterly grotesque abuse of power and use of violence for the sake of using violence.
I don't fear the groomers. I don't fear the pedophiles. I don't fear the corrupt politicians. And I definitely do not fear the dirty Muslims.
Debate should be had, but I also believe in the First Amendment. You should be able to say whatever you want.
Sure.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to another Piers Morgan Uncensored, which this one, I'm not going to lie about it. It's going to get a little bit out of hand. We got Valentina Gomez coming in, and this is just a firebrand, but in the worst possible way. You know what I'm saying? She just portrays bigotry a lot, and I hate to say it that way, but that is what it is. She seems to be filled with hate. She hates the Muslims and all that other nonsense, and, you know, it's just stupidity, if you ask me. Stupidity. But we also have Rob O'Neill, an American hero, as a matter of fact. Omar Badar, which is a journalist, and we got another side character coming in. But this is going to it's going to devolve into some insanity, and you're going to see some pushback, a lot of pushback against Valentina, who is absolutely running for Congress and is absolutely going to lose, because we don't need more of this. We need sane people going into Congress. We don't need hate-filled people going into Congress. And she makes the right look bad. She makes the right look like it's everything wrapped up into a bubble, right? Everything wrapped up into a bubble. Like, get a mental picture of what Nick Fuentes is to you, probably, and that's what Valentina Gomez is. Which Nick Fuentes, if you go look at a lot of his stuff, is not that, right? It just isn't. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love to hate Nick Fuentes. He's just not as bad as he's been portrayed. Straight up. You go look at Valentina Gomez, and she is just spewing nonsense on a consistent basis. And look, once again, just like everybody else in the world and everybody else through history, even bad people, you know, Stalin was right about certain things. Everybody gets things right, right? Once again, Stalin bad, Hitler bad, but there's some aspects where they did tell the truth and they were correct. Just like everybody, there's always nuance, folks. But, you know, once again, you got to take everything in as a whole. And, you know, I wouldn't advocate for Hitler, not in the least. I would advocate for what we did in World War II, as a matter of fact, and go and take this person out. And, you know, it's a sad state of affairs where we're at in this country sometimes. But you guys smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Click that join button, sign up, and become a member. That's the best way to help this channel expand and grow. And without any further ado, folks, here is the debate.
Yeah, you know, Piers, we know this stuff pretty well when it's committed by people domestically. The overwhelming majority of mass shootings that occur in the United States are committed by white people. The person who shot Charlie Kirk, it's white. People who shoot up schools on a regular basis. And we have the common sense to say we deal with these people individually. This is not reflective of the white community in America, and it doesn't mean that we have to take measures against the white community in the United States. We say what mental health factors, what ideological motivations. We deal with it with a level of nuance that makes sense. And we have an administration that simply traffics in bigotry. And so when you have an act of violence committed, in this case, the guy from Afghanistan, he was a recruit for CIA death squads in Afghanistan. That's the operative point. It's the death squad's part that makes people more inclined towards violence and makes them a risk, not the fact that he's Afghan. And to then take this particular incident and to generalize it about what threat Afghans might be posing or what threats Somalis might be posing or Muslims or whatever, that is bigotry 101. Basic elementary common sense can tell you that this is not how you deal with situations. And it's just incredibly disappointing and disheartening that we're living in a context in which people use that kind of bigotry to try to gain political advantage. People move people's emotions in a way that helps them take a political advantage. And it's extremely disappointing and the wrong way to go about things, especially if you're trying to build a strong, united country. You don't do it by dividing people like that.
Valentina Gomez, you were laughing as you were listening there. Many people have not been laughing at your video, particularly at phrases like "vote for me so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas." If you had a Muslim candidate in Texas saying "vote for me so we can kick every dirty Christian out of Texas," you would rightly, I imagine, be outraged at that. Why do you think it's acceptable to use a phrase like "so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas"?
Good morning, Piers. And since you didn't have the decency of introducing me correctly, I'll happily do it. Good morning to all of my beautiful people in England. Hello to all of my lads in the UK. Last time I was there, I had an amazing time. I'm Valentina Gomez. I will be the next congresswoman for the state of Texas, and I'm a warrior of the one true King Jesus Christ. And England and Piers, the United States and England was built by white Christian men that follow Jesus Christ, not by a bunch of Mohammeds. So let's get that cleared out right away.
Right. You haven't answered my question. Why do you, if it was the other way around, you would be rightly outraged. Why do you think it's acceptable as somebody running for office in the United States to be so blatantly, why would you be so blatantly hateful towards one group of people?
You call it hateful and bigotry and racist and all of that garbage. I call it the truth. America is a Christian nation. These Muslims come to Christian nations, burn our churches, rape our women, shoot our American soldiers point blank, killing one of them in broad daylight, then chanting Allahu Akbar. Piers, my brother is a National Guardsman. He literally puts himself on the line for this nation. So yes, these dirty Muslims have no place in America and have no place in England.
But as you speak, you see, I'm just seeing a brazen Islamophobe. And people say that phrase doesn't exist. It doesn't. And I'm sure you find it funny, but I think you can make perfectly pertinent points about what's happened here without descending into such vile hatred towards an entire religion. And there are 5 million Muslims in the United States. Why would you want to categorize them in such a grotesque manner?
Oh, and those 5 million Muslims should definitely go back to their 56 Muslim nations. And let's get something very clear right now in your little show, Piers. I don't fear the groomers. I don't fear the pedophiles. I don't fear the corrupt politicians. And I definitely do not fear the dirty Muslims.
Let me bring in...
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
No.
I mean, we should be clear about the fact. I mean, sure, Valentina is just a bigot, plain and simple, engages in the worst kinds of bigotry imaginable. But it's worth noting that she's fundamentally un-American because the American Constitution says that you cannot discriminate against people based on religion. That is pretty clear. And so she's engaging in an anti-American campaign in the name of protecting America, which is just irony beyond imagination. So yes, she's a charlatan. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You can tell by looking at her that her IQ hovers around room temperature. To me, the real scandal is not engaging with her directly because she's beneath taking seriously. But the problem is with the GOP, that you have a major party in this country having a candidate running under its flagship, engaging in this kind of really incredibly hateful, incendiary rhetoric, and they do nothing about it. We've seen it with the dissent with Donald Trump himself, with the lawlessness that he has brought to the table and the corruption that he's allowed to get away with, without the party really standing up and putting country before party and before president. And you can see that slippery slope now leading to this level, where you have just a complete hateful clown like this person representing that party without the party objecting to it.
Yeah, you know what?
Leading us towards a very, very dark place in this country.
I actually completely.
All right.
I completely agree with you. There are perfectly legitimate.
No, Piers. And to
I actually do agree with him. I think your brazen bigotry is obvious.
Let's make something very clear, Piers. Yeah. I only discriminate against terrorists. These terrorists have no place in America. They have no place in the world. And the best type of terrorist is a dead terrorist. And let's look at your Quran. Your Quran, 12 states to terrorize and behead those who believe in scriptures other than the Quran. And that Afghani, that dirty Muslim that killed Sarah Beckstrom.
It doesn't actually say that, and this is the problem.
And Andrew Wolf, who is
all right, let me bring in Kasim.
Okay, look, I'm sorry. You're not going to shame me into oblivion with your nonsense, my dude. I'm talking about Omar right here. He's talking about nobody in the GOP is calling this person out for what they are. Look, nobody in the Democratic Party is calling out the squad. Ilhan Omar, these people that absolutely hate America. They do. And look, her methods, her means by which she conveys a message might be ill-advised, right? You're not going to convey a message to anybody. You're not going to win over the independents. You're not going to win over most Republicans because we don't like to spew hate. But, the Democratic Party trying to shame us, once again, they're trying to use our own morals against us. And that's all they're trying to do here, is trying to bludgeon us over the head with our own morality. And that's just not going to work with me. Look, I'm sorry. The Democratic Party has no moral superiority to try to tell me that anybody in my party, which I'm not technically a Republican, but I caucus with Republicans, we'll just say that, and we can call me a Republican just for that sake, or whatever. I'm a conservative, we'll put it that way. You're not going to use my morality against me when I know you guys just absolutely have no morals at all. You guys will use morality to try to gain more power. You will try to use whatever you can. Snakes in the grass, that's what I call them. But look, getting to the real point here. Like she says, she doesn't discriminate on anybody except for terrorists. Look, I get that. We do have a lot of bad people coming into this country, but not all Muslims are bad. Now, this is a problem. The problem is, these people, they're trying to import all these people that do not assimilate. That is the problem. And how do we delineate between these people, differentiate different people that are or are not going to assimilate into this country? Well, there needs to be a stringent process by which we can cipher through these people. There is a test to become a citizen, right? This is the problem. Democrats are advocating for multiculturalism. That is a major problem. That is not going to work. That is going to destroy this nation. That is the argument that lady needs to be coming with. This multicultural democracy is just not going to work. It has proven a failure in Europe. It is going to fail here. It will never work. You cannot have cultures coexist that are antithetical to each other, right? Radical Islam and Christianity cannot mix. They just can't, right? Look, we can have Muslims. I can go and talk to just a rational Muslim, and we can have a disagreement over whether Jesus is the truth, the light, and the way. They will disagree with that. We serve the same God, supposedly, right? That remains to be seen, right? That's a debatable point. But for the most part, we can say we serve the same God, and we have, generally speaking, the same morality, right? The secular humanists, they don't have morality at all. They try to take morality from Christians, right? They try to take the God-given rights and then reject the God that gave them those rights. That's absurd. And it's the secular humanists that are trying to create this multiculturalism. It's just not going to work. This is a Christian nation, right? Freedom of religion was freedom to practice any form of Christianity that you wanted to. It was never meant to be a Muslim nation, not that type of freedom of religion. It was never meant to allow thousands of Buddhists to come in, even though we could probably, Buddhists could assimilate into this country and probably be just fine, right? We could probably all agree. Like whoever heard of a radical Buddhist? Seriously, it's the radicalism that is the problem here. And there are much, much more radical Islamists than there are Christians, Buddhists, any other religion, right? There are over, I think it's 250 million radical Islamists that think, violence is okay to gain a political outcome. Right? To gain a religious outcome, as a matter of fact. That is part of their doctrine, is to go and spread your seed in different nations, to go and spread the word or whatever, and take over these nations. That is in the Quran, as a matter of fact. He says, to behead heretics or whatever is not in the Quran. Well, it is. It's interpreted that way. Sure, it's not in there word for word, but people interpret it that way. And we've seen that time and time again. These radical Islamists beheading Christians. They are persecuting Christians in Nigeria right now. They're persecuting Christians all over the world, except for in the United States. And they're kind of trying to do it here in the United States as well. That's a problem. We got to filter through these people. We got to filter out the radicalism. That's the problem here. It's not anything else. right? That's the problem with this, but let's keep going. I've rambled on for too long.
Bigoted. It just should be called out for what it is, whether you're on the left or right. It makes a difference to me. But what do you feel about this? I just feel these debates should be had without descending into blanket bigotry.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, debates should be had, but I also believe in the First Amendment. You should be able to say whatever you want.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but that gives me the right to call it out.
Well, I mean, it's designed to protect speech you hate, and I would much rather someone be telling me exactly how they feel than like people in Washington do, tell me what I think I need to hear, and then go behind my back and commit massive fraud. I want to hear. I mean, you can say whatever you want. Someone who's been canceled, myself, say what you want, but deal with the consequences as they come, justified or not. That's just how it is. But the conversation is needed. I mean, even on forgive me, but one of the guests called the Afghan part of a death squad is someone who spent a lot of time with this particular pursuit team, but they were actually called the counterterror pursuit team. I don't know. We don't have death squads, so that's ridiculous. That's violent rhetoric right there itself. But he should be able to say it just when people like me who have been places like that realize, well, this guy's obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. But anyway, but again, the conversations do need to be had, because broad brush stroking everyone, every religion, every color of skin is wrong. But then if your only defense is Islamophobe, racist, name calling, that's nothing either.
No, but I agree. Listen, I've seen it for example, with the war in Gaza, that anyone who criticizes, as I have done increasingly in the last year, the Israeli government for decisions it's taken, having always supported their right to defend themselves and always supported the state of Israel to exist. But notwithstanding that, if you criticize the Israeli government, immediately you get branded now an anti-Semite, which I think is absurd. So I think you've got to take what people say and you've got to analyze it, and you've got to accept that criticizing an institution or a government for decisions they take, particularly in war, doesn't make you hateful of the people. I mean, it was interesting. I thought you posted something which Donald Trump reposted, Rob, which I'd love you just to expand on.
Sure.
You said in relation to the murder of the 2 National Guard members, if you've never been to Afghanistan, you wouldn't understand it. If you showed these people an espresso machine and gave them free coffee, they would assume you were a witch and chop your head off, but let's bring them in. Now, that's created, as you know, a lot of furore. What exactly did you mean?
Well, I mean, that's obviously tongue in cheek, and I actually I used X for purely entertainment, and that's that. What the point I was making? I have been to places like the Pesh River Valley in Afghanistan, where there's families from the Sharia Valley, the Korangal Valley, who have probably been living next to each other for 10,000 years. But if you make a mistake as someone from the Sharia going to the Korangal, they're going to cut your head off. This is a very serious place, and the vast majority of Westerners have no idea what they're talking about. Northeastern Afghanistan, northwestern Pakistan, the federally administered tribal area. These are not places like here. If you just grab people like that and say, hey, you're an American, you're going to get what happened here because of the violence and not understanding. The point I was making, I showed a dude, we were going to rescue Marcus Luttrell. I showed a dude from the Sharia Valley, his own village, the first time he'd ever seen an iPad or an aerial shot. I might as well have showed him the face of Muhammad itself. The guy, he physically couldn't handle the technology I was showing him. A lot of these people can't physically handle the Western culture until they're properly assimilated. That was my point, peppered with humor.
And on the wider point about who the United States should let in, Rob, what is your view of that? I mean, obviously America was founded in a very multicultural way, right? It was the place that everyone could come to.
Yeah, but I mean, America wasn't founded by grabbing a bunch of dudes from other countries, bringing them here, giving them free apartments and welfare. It was by people who wanted to escape religious persecution, and they started building things, not just coming here getting handouts. I mean, I've been a lot of places and I've seen a lot of people, and I mean, some of the most welcoming people I've met were in a war zone in Ramadi. Like, I've seen it, and you can't just say these people bad, these people good. The conversations need to be had, but again, you need to be realistic. And as soon as the truth is told and you don't like it, you just say racist. You're not going to build anything up.
Let's talk about the truth here, Piers. I got to jump in here. When we talk about the founding of America, it was founded by European colonizers, built on the backs of enslaved Africans and on the genocide of indigenous people. To claim that it wasn't, just free handout, it literally was. The Homestead Act, which was finally repealed in 1987, gave hundreds of millions of acres of free land to white European immigrants while denying them to the descendants of enslaved Africans. And so even to this day, the single demographic, the largest demographic on public welfare are white Americans, and studies have been done on this.
What about the 6,000 slaves that died building the World Cup venues for the Middle East in 2020?
And we condemn that too, and that's the
modern
difference between
slavery right now. Don't throw that slavery to the United States. We didn't invent it. We were the first to end it.
And that is the difference between me and you. I have no problem condemning that slavery by Qatar during the World Cup. I have zero.
Why don't you
problem.
lead with that? That was the most recent.
Why are we not holding them accountable? The difference is that I want
that's
there
not
to
the
be
topic.
accountability and restitution there, but there is no accountability and restitution or reparations for the enslaved Africans and their descendants who suffered genocide. And we rewrite this history. Well, we built it by our bootstraps. No, you didn't. You built it on the backs of enslaved Africans. And to the comment that Islam is new to America, 1/3 of those Africans were Muslim, who were forced into Christianity, who were beaten and murdered and raped. This is the legacy of this country, and for us to move forward,
It's the legacy of the world, bro. The legacy of the world. Slavery's been everywhere, and it still exists in the Middle East.
Yeah,
hasn't been here in a while. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died again.
The only ones that abolished slavery was America.
I'm not
America was the
defending
only
that
one
slavery.
that abolished
You're
slavery.
defending the
That's
legacy of
reality.
slavery here in the United States. That's the fundamental difference between us.
I'm defending the United States because everybody in the world's trying to get here because whatever we did works. It's the greatest country in the world. That's what I'm doing, dude.
With a known war criminal, and you're trying to lecture me. I'm agreeing. We shouldn't be supporting those people. My question to you is, why do you continue to support a president who is rubbing elbows with MBS, who, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have killed more people than Jeffrey Dahmer with these illegal strikes, which are clearly a violation of international law.
Let me ask. Hang on.
Okay, so right off the top, I kind of want to dispel that preconception that Piers was talking about. Wasn't the early American history just multicultural, just all these people coming in? Yeah, but they all assimilated to what was going on in America. And like Rob said right there, they came here to build something. They didn't come here to get a welfare check, for goodness sakes. But, let me dispel that right quick because, yeah, sure, they were on a micro scale different cultures, but they were all Christians. All of them, Christian and European. Sure, you had minor differences in the culture, right? Like an Italian is going to be different than somebody from England, right? They're going to have different cooking styles and different foods, different ways about, building houses or taking a dump or whatever that may be. There are going to be minor differences. But you come to the melting pot and you melt into the pot, right? Anytime there's a foreign object in that pot, what do we generally do? We scoop it out and get rid of it. If it's not going to melt into the pot, it cannot assimilate into the stew, if you will. All right, so let's get that out of the way, right? A lot of different cultures came here to become part of the American culture. Right? These foreign objects coming in, they are trying to disrupt American culture and create enclaves of their own culture within that culture. There's Sharia courts in Texas, which we're going to get to that, so let's move on. I can't stand this idea that this idea these people are spouting. It's just nonsense that, America was built on the back of slaves. That's not true. That's utterly just false. It's absolutely false, right? Now, everybody built America. Everybody had a part in making this nation what it is. Like, sure, slavery, bad. Just like communism, bad. Pol Pot, bad. Mao, bad. Stalin, bad. Hitler, bad. All these people, bad. Slavery, bad. But, once again, folks, think about it like this. I can't stand that idea. It wasn't built on the backs of slaves. Sure, they had a hand. They were part of building this nation. But so were the white European settlers. They're the ones that carved this nation out. Slaves came in after that and assisted with building this nation up. But think about it like this, folks. Now, this might be a hot take, and I might get some flack for this, but think about it like this. Okay, these slaves that came to America, personally, if you look at the conditions back then in Africa, they were way better off in America under slavery than they were under slavery in Africa, because that's what they would have been in Africa anyway. Because they are the ones that kidnapped and tortured their own people and put them into slavery and sold them to us, right? And who abolished slavery, by the way? America did. White European settlers abolished slavery because we saw it as abhorrent. It violates our religion, for crying out loud. Now, I don't want to hear these people coming in talking about, but the Bible advocates for slavery. No, as a matter of fact, it doesn't. It just understands that slavery exists and says, treat your slaves kindly. Basically, that's what it says. I'm not going to get out there and start quoting Bible verses verbatim, but that's basically what it says. And besides the fact, once again, context is important. Nuance is important. Back then, slavery, it's been different. It's different all over the world. You know, some people are just tortured as slaves and forced to work. Some people, slaves get paid, indentured servants. That is a thing, folks. Right? And back then, you know, some people, if they owed a debt, they chose to go into slavery to pay off that debt. That's called indentured servitude. That's what that is. That's basically what the Bible was referencing right there. You treat them as, you know, you treat them kindly, basically. It's absurd that these people deserve reparations. I don't think they deserve reparations at all. I think those people, a lot of those people and their descendants are way better off than they would be if they were to have stayed in Africa. That's what I think. And once again, that might be a hot take, but think about it. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm not advocating that slavery was a good thing. No. Once again, if it was my preference, that would have never happened at all. Just outright. But think about that for a second. Then you wouldn't have the black population in America that we actually have these days. And those people might not even exist. Well, they probably wouldn't exist, to be honest with you. But once again, think about your choices here. These people were going to be enslaved anyway. At least they had a chance to come here and be a part of a system that would one day abolish slavery. A lot of those people put in the work, put in the hard work to get the Civil Rights Act, which was one of the most monumental achievements this country has ever made, I think. Right? Second only to nothing. Seriously, like that's the most monumental achievement for this country, is to abolish slavery and then give those people the equal rights that they deserved. Right? Going to the moon is up there, but it's not even close, folks. That is the most monumental, because all people deserve equal rights under God, because God created those people as well. He didn't create those people as a underclass. There is no underclass. Right? Everybody is equal. That's how we should always try to go about everything that we do, is people are equal. And look, I'm sorry, I don't think that descendants of slave owners should have to pay for descendants of slaves to give them any sort of reparations. I just don't think that's right. You're punishing an entire class of people for no reason. But let's keep going, y'all.
In the UK, there are about 5 million Muslims and 250,000 Jews. So it's a different dynamic to what is going on in the country. And the concern in my country, which has always been very tolerant, I think very multicultural, very well assimilated in the main, the concern comes from people who look at reports, verified reports, that there are now nearly 100 unofficial Sharia law courts, for example, operating in the UK. In other words, there are a group of people, in this case the Muslim community, operating their own law within our framework of our laws. Is that something that should be tolerated? I mean, should countries like the United States and the UK tolerate the existence of rival courts, rival law within their own border?
Piers, I promise I will answer your question very directly, but just a quick comment on those strikes and the mention of Obama. There's no question that Obama did, in fact, engage in unlawful strikes, and people should object to them when he kills an American citizen abroad with those drone strikes. And what Trump has done is just escalated that to a worse level. With Obama, again, not defending his policy, it's indefensible and should be condemned, nonetheless struggling with the idea, is this person a threat? Are people going to die if we don't engage in that strike? Those are the kind of calculations he's engaging in. And frankly, he should have erred on not engaging in extrajudicial killings. But in the case of Trump, there's not even the pretense of that. He declared these organizations terrorists so he can justify this war. We're bombing boats that we don't know anything about. We don't have any confirmation that they're in fact engaged in drug smuggling. And even if we did, we have no sense of why anybody who's on board would be in fact a threat and could not be apprehended and put on trial. So we engage in these strikes and then we kill them when people are hanging on these boats who are injured and obviously pose no threat. I think this is just utterly grotesque abuse of power and use of violence for the sake of using violence, completely unjustifiable and for alternative political ends. So just want to put that out. Now, on the question of Sharia courts, certainly they should not supersede the actual laws of the country. If a Muslim community wants to settle its own disputes using religious law consensually, they should be allowed to do that if they want to. There are certain things with Jewish law as well and many others. But ultimately, the law of the country is what should reign supreme. And if there are people who want to have the result. Nobody should be able to impose that court in lieu of the actual law taking place and impose that on somebody else. So it's a matter of what the jurisdiction is of these courts. They should never supersede existing law, and I don't think that they do. I think these are completely consensual courts that people enter to resolve their religious disputes if they all parties agree that this is how they want to resolve their issues.
Valentina Gomez.
Sharia courts have no place in England. Sharia courts have no place in Christian nations. That's why you guys have 56 Muslim nations. And I fully support and love what President Trump and Pete Hegseth are doing. We need to bomb more narco-terrorism to oblivion. That's the reality. You defend terrorists because you're probably a little terrorist yourself as well. That's the reality.
Okay, to address the beginning of that, once again, this is where this guy's bias is coming in. Oh, we condemn Obama, but Trump is much worse. Obama killed American citizens, and Trump hasn't, but he's much worse. For some reason. They're both killing terrorists. It's all extrajudicial assassinations. But hang on just a second. At least Trump hasn't killed American citizens. Look, once again, I'm not a fan of these things. But I'm not going to cry over terrorists getting obliterated. Sorry. I didn't like it when Obama did it. But once again, I'm not going to cry over terrorists getting obliterated. Now, when American citizens get obliterated, that's a totally different story. So far, Trump hasn't killed American citizens. Who is worse with that? But this idea that we can have, if it's consensual, we can have Sharia courts. No, Sharia courts are antithetical to our system. That's basically discriminating on the basis of religion. We don't allow for that. I don't care if it's, religious discipline or not, right? You're punishing somebody based on their own religion. Even if it's their own religion doing it, does that make it okay? No, it doesn't. This is ridiculous. These people are absurd. He's like, as long as it doesn't supersede American supremacy. Well, it does. It absolutely does. It is not allowed within our system. That is absolutely disallowed. So we can't have that. And we do, folks. And they need to be obliterated. They need to be taken out immediately. We cannot have that within our system. You don't have like any sort of Jewish religious courts in this country or Christian religious courts in this country, do we? No, our judicial system essentially is based on Christianity. Most of your secular humanists, they ignore that reality. All of our rights, our judicial system, that's all based on the Bible, based upon Christianity. This is a Christian nation, for goodness sakes. What I find fascinating about this is, it's not so easy to be a Christian in a Muslim nation or in these other nations, right? But it sure is easy to be a Muslim in a Christian nation. Of course, not if Valentina Gomez is around, but hey, it is what it is, y'all. Let's keep going.
Clear, Valentina Gomez. I've had 3 reasonable members of this panel offering reasonable arguments.
Reasonable,
all I've heard from you so far is dumb bigotry, accusations of terrorism against people who are just perfectly ordinary journalists. There's something wrong with you. Why do you do this?
Sounds like you during COVID, Piers. You were vilifying, shaming, and trying to destroy people for not wanting to take the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
You tried to destroy.
And you know what? I was wrong. I was wrong.
Exactly, you're wrong, and you still are wrong today.
Well, you don't become less wrong. I've admitted I was wrong. I've apologized. What I've not seen from you, is any admission of being wrong or an apology for the disgusting way you talk about people. Why do you do it?
I apologize for nothing. My statements and my actions have endured the test of time. And Piers, since you cut me off, let me finish. You've been on national television for 20 years, and during that entire time, England has only gotten more Muslim. For 20 years,
when were you last in England?
To even say or to even call out the rapist Muslims. Piers, you're not uncensored. The truth is, you have been complicit with the rape of England into its submission. It's not only on Keir Starmer, it's also on you, on the police and the courts that have covered up for their crimes. Absolutely. And I'll say what everybody else is thinking. England is better off without all the Muslims. And that goes the same way to the United States. We can solve all of our problems if these Muslims are sent back to their Sharia nations, because they're not here to assimilate.
You think there would be no problem problems.
American or the
You
British.
think you'd have no?
Piers, let me
You think
finish.
you'd have
Let me
no?
finish,
Just to be
Lord.
clear.
Let me finish,
Just to be
Piers.
no.
No,
I'll tell you
Lord.
what. You finish.
Piers, I'll
You
finish.
finish. You
They're
said
not here to
you said what you want to
assimilate
say.
to the American or
You
the
said what you
British
want
way
to
of
say.
life.
Yeah, you see, this has been my suspicion.
Okay.
Because the last time you were here, you were at a Tommy Robinson march. And this has been my problem with Tommy Robinson.
Oh, yes.
No, yeah, not that Tommy Robinson wasn't right to expose the grooming gangs. He was. The problem is that he and many of his followers, like you, actually hate Muslims. You're actual genuine Islamophobes. You would like them all removed
Muslims,
from the
they belong in
country.
their Muslim nations. That's the thing. They're just obsessed with coming to Christian nations, burning our flag, chanting death to America, killing our American soldiers. So yes, they belong in their Muslim nations. Piers, let me finish what I said. These Muslims are not here to assimilate to the American or the British way of life.
Actually, many Muslims assimilate perfectly well.
They only contribute to rape statistics and terrorist attacks.
Really? And you don't think any white Christians commit any crime in the UK or US?
They do, and we deal with them.
Well, we do the same with Muslims who commit crimes.
No, you don't. No,
yes,
you
we
don't,
do.
Piers. That's why you have a huge Pakistani, a Muslim, a
That
dirty
was a
Muslim
disgusting
gang
scandal.
going on in the
You know
UK.
what? You know what? On that
Now
point, you're absolutely right. The British Pakistani grooming scandal,
They're not British.
abuse scandal.
They're not British.
Well, you can use any terminology you like. I will use mine, which is the correct terminology. That scandal was disgusting. It was actually exposed by a journalist who I knew on the Times, who
Like
did
Tommy
some
Robinson.
extraordinary work. Tommy Robinson amplified it,
Helps.
but it was exposed by a journalist on the Times newspaper.
Because of Tommy Robinson,
and it
Piers,
was
nobody
covered
would
up,
have known.
and it was covered up in a disgraceful manner that shamed my country, right? And I'm very happy to agree about that point. But it doesn't mean that every Muslim of the 5 million Muslims in my country are somehow complicit with those disgusting monsters. In the same way that when a white Christian commits a heinous crime, I don't assume that every white Christian is the same. Why would you?
Piers, you can take the Muslim out of a terrorist nation, but you cannot take the terrorism out of a Muslim. And give me one example of a Christian committing a terrorist attack right now.
Well,
against Muslims.
let me ask you then: when the UK and the United States illegally invaded Iraq in 2003, I waged a campaign against that. So, what would you say about that illegal invasion of a Muslim country?
Muslims are killing Christians in Nigeria, Piers.
Right. So I didn't ask you about Nigeria. I asked you about Iraq.
Iraq? Well, repeat your question again, please.
Do you agree that we illegally invaded Iraq in 2003?
I don't think she's bright enough to understand your question, Piers.
I don't think she does. I don't think she wants to understand it. But in 2003, in my opinion, illegally invaded Iraq, a sovereign country. 1 million people died. It created ISIS, which then wreaked mayhem for 2 decades, and was a stain on my country and on the Prime Minister Tony Blair, who I think should have been held up in a court of law over what happened under my name and the name of the British people. But do you care about that? Do you care that 1 million people, including hundreds of thousands of Muslims, were killed in a war in Iraq, which in my opinion was fought on an illegal false pretext that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, which he didn't, it turned out?
Piers, in 2003, I was 4 years old, and I cannot change what happened back then.
No, I asked you for your opinion.
I
asked you for your opinion.
They can bomb every terrorist country they want.
Your
That's the
intellect has
reality.
not grown a year since then.
Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, ISIS,
You still think
they
like
all
a
come from the
4-year-old.
Middle East. But then they're obsessed. Then they're, yes, I'm honest. I'm honest. And I am the American dream on steroids. I have worked my way to the top.
You're not the American dream, Valentina. You're not the American dream. You're the American nightmare.
Yes, I am.
You're somebody fomenting hatred towards an entire community in your country. And I don't understand why you need to do that.
They belong in their Muslim nations, Piers. That's
Sorry?
the reality.
What's that?
They belong in their Muslim nations,
Really?
Piers. That's the reality.
So would you deport every single?
You could be a leader for the UK,
so just to be clear, then you would deport. You would deport. Just to be clear. You would deport every Muslim from the US and the UK, would you?
Yes.
Look, if she would just focus her animus toward the extremist Islamists, I don't think there would be much of a, tone back the rhetoric just a little bit, focus your animus to where it needs to be focused. The people that want to come into this country and try to change this country, they take their third world and try to import that into the United States. That is the problem, folks. It's not the Muslim community, right? It's never all. Not all. It's never all. Right? We can always say that. You cannot just throw a wide blanket across this entire community and say all of these people. No, it's never that. Never, ever that. There are bad apples in every single community, right? We have our problems here in the United States. The problem is the people coming into the country illegally, and then these Democrats that actually advocate for multiculturalism. They want this country to change. No, I'm sorry. That is not how countries work. You don't go into one of these Muslim nations and try to turn it Christian, for goodness sakes. You don't go in and take America into their country. That's right. We've tried to do that. We've tried to bring democracy to these nations, and it's ended in disaster every single freaking time. And when you try that by reverse, that is going to be the same situation just here. You can't do that. It doesn't work. Like, these people are absurd. Now, I love this argument, though, because, the multiculturalism just isn't going to work. You just can't have that. This is why we have countries in the first place. This is why the world hasn't united under the banner of peace and freedom, right? Because it just doesn't work. I'm sorry. People can get along. Cultures can't. There's I don't understand this idea like with the H-1Bs, wanting to import India into this country. India has a lot of problems over there, folks. I don't want America to be turned into India, right? And just vice versa, right? I don't want India to be turned into America. That's just not how the world works. Those people have that culture for a reason. That culture has cultivated itself to get wherever it's at, no matter what you may think of it. It is what it is. That's what they want it to be. These other nations, their culture is what it is because that's how they've cultivated their nation. I'm sick and tired of these people coming in trying to think that they can change this nation. What is wrong with this nation? We abolished slavery. We've made everybody equals in this country. We have our problems too. Not saying that America is perfect. Of course not. No country or culture is perfect. Every culture and country has its issues. All right, but I think I think the United States is better. Hey, admonish me for doing so. I don't care. To be honest, the United States has built something great here. This is why those people want to come to this country. Right? And the ones that want to come to this country because they see the United States as better, those are the people that we want. Because they want to come to America to be Americans. A lot of these people, like these Somali fraudsters or whatever, they come to America to defraud America. They didn't come to America to be Americans. All right, look, I understand we have criminals in this country too, once again. But that just, I'm sorry. These people, that argument that, oh, well, migrants by far, commit less crimes. That's not true. That is absolutely not true. That is just not true. It's the same, folks. It is the same. Those studies are manipulated studies. Absolutely. If you go and look into it, those studies are manipulated. So they don't factor in certain groups. They don't factor in criminal aliens. They don't factor in none of those things. They just take certain segments of the population and be like, look at these people. These people, they're industrious and they're studious and they're well behaved and well mannered. Great people. And they are. Those people are. But not all. Not all, not all, not all. It's never all. People are people, folks. You have bad apples in every single group. And I think that's the overarching message of this entire video. That you can't single out a group of people. Right? Just like saying, the slaves built this nation. No, sorry. That's not how that works. That is completely foregoing everybody else that built this nation. It was the entirety of this nation built this nation. The settlers that first came here carved out this nation. They are the foundation, and everything that else that came after that built upon their work. It is what it is, folks, but I think I've rambled on for long enough. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can, especially on X. That would be great. Rumble, all those places, right? Do all that. Click that join button, sign up, and become a member, especially if you want more content like this. And if you like news and politics and knowing what's going on in the world, or at least in America, this is the place to be, folks. We go over news. We read the entire news article, figure out exactly what's going on, figuring out where we're being manipulated, where the truth lies, and all that good stuff in between. So y'all do all that for me. And you guys remember, look, God has a plan for everybody. And here comes the preaching, right? But he does. Jesus died on the cross to save us. And it's up to us, right? If we want to submit ourselves to God, we must receive that salvation. We must understand, humble ourselves to realize that we are imperfect beings, that we are always going to fall short of the glory of God. We're never going to be perfect. We're always going to be sinners. We must acknowledge that and turn ourselves over to God. It's the only way to get to heaven. It's through Jesus Christ, folks. But anyway, you guys try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.